And we've had a really excellent response from students wanting to attend this session actually and find out a bit more from you. So can you tell us a bit more about your job and what you currently do, Joe?
Sure, I'll do my best. Thanks for inviting me in. Hi, everybody. I'm not sure how many people we've got there altogether.
Three at the moment.
Okay, good. So my name's Joe Rosenthal. I was at Merchants, and I left certainly before all of you were born, and probably before all your parents were born. It's scary to say. So I'm happy to be here, but aware that I'm someone who's actually been around a long time, and the experience I've had will be different in the modern world, and things have changed to some extent, but not everything has changed. And I think a lot of things, are principles that can still apply. So, just to tell you a bit about me, I left school in 1977, a long time ago, and I wanted to do medicine then, and I assume that's mainly why we're here to talk about medical careers. I wanted to do medicine then, and I didn't get good enough A levels, and I decided to do a psychology degree, which was great. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I still wanted to do medicine, and I applied as a graduate and got in, fortunately, and that was quite unusual then, but it's now quite common. So I would say that you're still very young, and it's hard to make decisions about your long-term career. And careers are different now. People often go through more than one career. But medicine has become easier to join a bit later, and I think that's actually not a bad thing. Most countries in the world, actually, medicine is a graduate entry program only. Certainly in the US, that's the case, in Canada. So it's possibly a bit early to be going to medical school at sort of 18, 19 and becoming a doctor at 23, 24. And there might be something to be said for delaying it a little bit. So I'm not pushing that, but I'm just saying it is an option. Graduate entry in medicine is an option. If you do something else for 3 or 4 years, it doesn't mean you can't choose to do medicine. It's going to be competitive, whatever stage. At, at the moment, and I don't see it changing in the near future, in spite of everything that's going on, medicine remains probably the hardest thing to get into, apart from vet. I think that's true. And although there has been an increased number of places, it's still very competitive. It's competitive if you're going straight from school. It's competitive if you're going from another degree. So whatever your plan, you need to be prepared to make your CV as strong as possible. So my story continues from psychology degree, medical degree, and I enjoyed that enormously. Being a medical student is a great thing. It's interesting, it's fun, you meet lots of great people, and you have a really varied and exciting time at university with all the normal stimulation of being a student, plus the stimulation of the course, if you've chosen the right thing. And some people realise quite early on perhaps they don't want to do medicine, and that's fine. They can find an alternative. But if you've done the right thing, you will enjoy being a medical student. But then the hard thing is what to do after that, because it's such a broad discipline, and that's a positive and a negative thing. It's great to have opportunities and be sure of a job. It's there's not that many degrees where you can really be secure. There will be work for you, and I don't think that's going to change in your career span. But it means you've got to choose which bit of medicine, and there are so many and so different parts that some people struggle a bit. I didn't really struggle, though. I found out quite soon that I liked certain things and didn't like certain things more than others, but I kind of liked everything a bit, and so general practice for me seemed a natural choice, because you get to do everything, and you can develop certain special interests in certain areas, but you've got that breadth of what to me seemed that's what being a doctor is, just being there for people to come to with any health issues to talk about. Whereas to be a specialist, you really have to be very interested and devoted to the kidney or the heart or the liver or the lungs or whatever, modern medical specialties are just that. They're very specialised. And for me, I was more interested to do a bit of everything. But it does depend on you as a person, and that's something that you will know as you go along what feels right to you. So I wanted to be a GP, so I went from medical school. Then you had to do 1 year as what's called a house officer. Now you have to do 2 years after your medical training, which is usually 5, often 6 years of medical training. 2 years as a foundation doctor now, and then you choose which specialty you want to train in. And I chose general practice, which was another 3 years of training based. It's about half of those 3 years you're in hospital jobs, doing different sorts of hospital medicine, some paediatrics, some gynecology, some different combinations. There's no standard combination, but you have to have another 18 months. So even if you're going to be a GP, you've got to do, what is it, 3.5 years as a hospital doctor before they let you loose in general practice. So I did my 3-year GP scheme, and then you are a GP, and it's actually general practice is the sort of quickest, the shortest training to get your specialist ticket and to be registered with the GMC as a specialist in general practice. So at that point, you can go and work anywhere in the country, and in those days, anywhere in Europe. That's changed a bit. I've done my GP training. I trained in medicine in Cardiff, actually, but did my GP training in London. I liked London, so I looked around for jobs, and I ended up getting a job which was as a lecturer, actually. So I was half-time seeing patients in general practice, half-time doing teaching research. Again, lucky breaks often come in. It just happened that a job was advertised and I applied for it. The fact that I'd done a previous degree in psychology actually helped me, because I've done a bit of research and writing and so on. So that helped me get that sort of job in a university. And I kind of stuck with that and ended up going through the academic track of being always working part-time as a GP and part-time in teaching research, and you go through the ranks from lecturer, senior lecturer to professor, and that's where I'm at now, at the sort of far end of my career as a professor in general practice, training other doctors to become GPs, training medical students in general practice, and seeing patients for 2 days a week. So for me, it's a nice mix. I think that's always been what's I've been drawn to, variety. So variety by being a GP, further variety by being a clinical doctor and an academic, working in the medical school, doing teaching research with students. And I suppose that's probably the bit that might be of interest to you, because over the years I have been directly involved in the admissions side of the medical school, selecting students, reading their UCAS forms and their personal statements, and their and chairing interview panels and things. So I've got a bit of experience of that sort, which I'm happy to discuss and take any questions on. So that's where I'm at. I think I've said enough. I'm happy to hand over to you guys to ask any questions you might like to about medicine in general, and if there are questions about general practice in particular. But that's a long way down the line when you choose whether you're going to be a hospital doctor, a GP, or another sort of doctor. That's further down the line. I'm sure your focus is pretty much at this stage on how to get a place at medical school, or even before that, is it what I want to do? Do I really want to become a doctor? Because that's probably the most important question of all. And maybe we can also discuss alternatives. Perhaps you're interested in the biomedical sciences, but you don't have to be a doctor to pursue those sort of interests. So I'm going to hand over to you at that point.
So can I ask you then, I think a few questions are coming in on the conversation, but can I ask you, what do you look for on an application? What are the things that you're looking for?
In the written application, I mean, it goes without saying that you have to have the grades, and I think that's an unfortunate reality, but you have to face it. The other stuff is really important. The work experience, the sport and the music and all those things, they're great. But if you don't get the grades, it really doesn't matter. So if you're going to focus on one thing, I'm afraid it makes me a bit sad to say, because I kind of know that to be a great doctor, you don't actually have to be the most cleverest top of the class scientist, but because medicine's popular, it's very hard for medical schools to find a reasonably fair way to judge between the applications, and the most objective way is academic grades. So I think you know this, you really have to prioritise getting good GCSEs and good A levels, better than good, excellent. And all the medical schools have websites, they all tell you their exact requirements. They vary a little bit from school to school. But you know, I think you really got to have at least 5 A-star A's at GCSE and AAB at A level. You know, that's ballpark, because some places require all A's, but I don't think anywhere requires less than A, B. I think all require chemistry. These things keep changing. A lot require, yeah, a lot require biology, or at least biology. Yeah. Some insist that you've done something non-science for one of your A levels to give you a bit more breadth, but not all. And then, of course, there's, I'm not sure it's all, but nearly all will have their own medical admissions test. And again, that's a bit not quite straightforward. Some medical schools use something called UK CAT, some use something called BMAT. You may all be very familiar with this, but the medical school where I work, it's BMAT, and you have to get a very high score in that, as well as good A level. So all of these things are the number one priority, and all the other stuff that I know students get quite exercised by are second highest priority.
Okay. So once you've looked at the GCSEs and the A levels, and they've got a tick,
yeah,
and once you've looked at the BMAT score,
predicted grades,
yeah, so you've looked at those, and they're at the grades they need to be, and then you get their BMAT score in, and you know they meet the threshold. What's the next thing you're looking for, Joe?
Well, the personal statement is definitely read and is taken seriously, but there is a bit of a sense that some applicants do have more help than others, and how confident you can be as to how much coaching has gone on, who's helped her. So again, it's certainly important, but it's probably not as important as students might think it is. You need to really communicate, to me anyway, and different people, you know, there's lots of different people reading applications, and there's an element of luck there, and if it happens to be you know, a hardline laboratory scientist in the medical school who's reading it, they might be impressed by different achievements from someone like me who's looking more for the kind of possibly the human side of it. You know, there's always more than one person. Two people read the applications at UCL anyway. I can only speak for my own medical school, and interview panels will have 4 people on. So it's never going to be down to one person. There's always a kind of committee perspective on this. But I suppose I can only really tell you what I look for, which is a sense of real motivation. Does this student really know what they're letting themselves in for? Because it's not just about whether they're going to be a good doctor in the future, it's about whether they're going to thrive as a person at medical school, whether they're going to enjoy it and survive it, actually, because it is, I told you how much fun it is, but it's also hard. It's hard work academically, and it's hard work to some extent emotionally. It requires a lot of resilience. That's become a popular word, and it's really important, because to be a medical student and to be a doctor, you really have to be quite resilient, and that's a hard thing to define, but somehow you're looking for that somewhere in the words that you get on the application form. So understanding what medicine is, what being a doctor is going to be like, and I would say not being too kind of certain of what your future will be. I'm slightly anxious about people saying, I'm determined to be a brain surgeon. You know, when you're 17, 18, that is too soon to know. You don't, you know, and I think you can say something I've been fascinated by this, but I would always urge you to say, but also something along the lines of I'm aware that I'd have a lot to learn. I look forward to experiencing all the different aspects of that. So it's just that open-mindedness, I suppose, and I would urge you to sort of show an interest in the broad range of what makes up medicine. So the science is important, the human aspects, the curiosity about people's lives, the helping things, that try and give examples that show that you've got that maturity of understanding of all that's involved in being a doctor, not just the kind of I want to find a cure for cancer thing.
Beyond the resilience, what other skills do you think make a really good medical student?
Well, I think we've said academic prowess is important. Organisational skills, important leadership, that side of things. So if you've kind of set up a group or run a school after school class, those sort of things that show you've got kind of organisational leadership skills, interests outside school. I mean, I think all this kind of goes without saying, doesn't it? But I mentioned that the sort of music and sport, they help to show that you're a rounded person. It's great if you've been the captain, but you don't have to be the captain. Just having some activities that show that you haven't just spent your first kind of 18 years of your life sitting in front of a computer or reading books or whatever. You've been out there, seen a bit of the world and understand a bit about people.
So if we have a student in year 12 at the moment, some of them will have a bit of work experience, some of them might not have had any at all. What is your advice to those students that are then thinking of making an application for October?
Working experience is great if you can get it, but we understand it's hard to get. The NHS is, well, firstly, it's a busy place, and actually, when school leavers approach us, it's a bit of work when you're already busy to try and find a niche for them to come in and someone to look after and support them and speak to them things. So it's often easier to say no than yes when approached. Also, there is some bureaucracy involved about confidentiality with patients and access to records, and also we have a lot of medical students around, so having additional students is often physically the space and things is a problem. So we understand it's hard, and we also understand that some students just happen to be lucky and have the right connections to get into certain work experience, and that's fine, and I would encourage them to use those connections, but you shouldn't be disadvantaged because you haven't got those connections. So other ways of just meeting and talking to people, even if it's not a formal workplace, if your word limit is so tight, isn't it, on the person? If you can use one of your sentences just to say, I spent an afternoon with, it doesn't really matter what sort of, any sort of doctor, maybe preferably 2 or 3 in different areas. So perhaps a GP, perhaps a hospital doctor, and maybe you can get to talk to someone who works in perhaps laboratory medicine or something different. That's just as good, really, as I spent my summer holidays working every day and helping out in a renal unit. You don't get necessarily 3 times as many brownie points for that. It's just showing that breadth of interest and that willingness to explore options and learn about people's real experience in different parts of the NHS, and not just the NHS, the caring side. If you can get yourself any contact with all people's homes, voluntary organisations, third sector, alcohol and drug services, all these things, that just doing something with people side of things is just as helpful, I would say, as a formal NHS placement. I think Lisa sent round a link which is just happens to have come out just this week. The Royal College of GPs of recognising the the challenge of getting placements, have set up a sort of virtual placement. I think that's a really great opportunity, even if being a GP is not on your radar at all at this stage. Just to have a look at that and see the sort of case it's got some videos of patients and members of the healthcare teams and things, and just to go through those, and then you can use some of your words on your application form to say, I spent a couple of hours doing this. That's experience. It's maybe a different sort of experience, but it's still relevant.
Okay. Somebody's asked, if you're not sure if you really want to do medicine, should you not do it?
I guess it partly depends what your alternatives you might be considering are. If you've got a short list of things and medicines on it, then it's kind of that usual thing of weighing up. Sort of, I would say, make a list. What are the pros and cons of each of those options? Say you've got medicine on one side and, I don't know, dentistry on the other, or biochemistry or something. Make yourself a list of what are the good things and the not so good things about each of those. I would also say that if you've got the, how should I put it, the ability to get into medicine, you don't necessarily have to be a doctor. And a medical degree, even if you don't end up practicing medicine, it's still got quite a lot of currency within certainly within the biomedical science world, but also outside. If you turn up with a medical degree at a bank in the city, they're probably going to think, well, okay, this person's got through medical school and qualified as a doctor. They're probably reasonably bright, they're probably reasonably organised and able. We'll give them an interview for this job, along with the graduates in economics and accountancy and things. And I know there are medical graduates who've done that sort of thing, particularly in London. So, but you still, if you're not sure you're going to enjoy those, it's a long time, isn't it, 5-6 years, then I wouldn't do it just for that reason. But just to say that it doesn't, a medical degree is a university degree, just like any other university degree, which you can use to pursue other sorts of careers. If in doubt, difficult, isn't it? I mean, my view is skewed, because I just can't see how anyone would not enjoy being a medical student and a doctor. For me, it's worked really well, and I would encourage anyone who's even thinking about it to go for it. But that's probably a biased view.
And what do you think the best and the worst things are about being a doctor then, Joe?
Okay, so for me, the best things I think are variety, reasonable security. There's not, as I said, not many degrees where you get a job, a reasonably paid job. You won't get really rich as a doctor unless possibly the very rich doctors are those who do surgical specialties and work mainly in the private sector. And you can get very wealthy that way, but you work really hard. You really have to devote your life, because you're going to have to be available 24 hours a day to patients, 7 days a week for the most part. You can get rich that way, but for most doctors, you'll have a comfortable living. You'll get reasonable sort of status in society, if that's important to you. But for me, it's more about feeling you're doing something that's kind of useful, having a sense of purpose. Lots of jobs can give you that. I'm not saying it's only medicine, but that, for me, I've always felt like it's worth getting up and going to work. It's not just another day doing something who really cares. Because I know I have friends who they say that's really how it is. They can't wait to retire. For me, I'm approaching the age where I could retire. I really don't want to. I enjoy work, and they pay me to go to work. Why would I stop? I wouldn't rather be gardening or playing golf. If I did play golf, I'd rather be going to work. It's almost like being paid to do your hobby. So I think that's great if you can find that in any career, and not many people do. But quite a lot, probably, I suspect more doctors do than some other groups than some other professional groups, because it's kind of, there every day, you are seeing that you are making a difference. Sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you make things worse for people. That's one of the downsides, I suppose. We should come on to that. There's a lot of responsibility to carry. Not all the time. You're not making life and death decisions day in, day out, but sometimes you actually are, and not many jobs require that of you. And sometimes it's hard, but it's also rewarding. And when you get it right, and if you've been properly trained and you do your job well, you usually do get it right. So so the downsides are that you're going to have to carry responsibility. You're going to have to have difficult conversations sometimes with people. You are sometimes going to see things that other people don't have to face, and that can be, sometimes, I won't go into details, and it's not common, but sometimes you see things you'd rather not, but that can happen to anyone. But your training prepares you for this, or it should. And you also have that choice of, to put it bluntly, if you don't like the sight of blood, then you can be a psychiatrist or a public health doctor or something where you don't have to face that. If you really like that kind of cutting edge thing, then you go and be a trauma doctor, and you go in helicopters and rescue people from coach crashes and things. That thrills some people, and others that scares them stiff, but you can make decisions.
Do you think medicine has a good work-life balance, as students asked?
It's a bit tricky. And work-life balance, I don't think I'd ever heard of work-life balance when I was a medical student. I'm showing my age here, but I think if you're lucky enough to choose the right work, it's part of your life. You don't need to think of two different things. It's all part of life, and yes, you have to try to balance it. It's right, but if you think, actually, I'm not going to be happy unless I have a 9 to 5 job and I can have every weekend off, don't do medicine. It's not like that. Someone's got to be there in the A&E department all night, every night, all weekend, every weekend. It won't be you all the time, but you have to do your share. Certainly as a junior doctor, and we use the word junior doctor, but actually you're a junior doctor for a long time. So if you don't want to work evenings, weekends, forget it. It's just got to be done. But if you like what you're doing, it's really not a problem. And if you do a week of nights, you get a week of days free. That you make the most of it. So it is tricky to get work-life balance, but it can be done. Also, you can work part-time. That's becoming more possible. You can work what's called flexibly, work flexible time. So there are some doctors who work maybe 3 days a week and have a couple of days where either they don't work or they do something different or they have family responsibilities. It is possible to work part-time, not as a medical student though, not yet. But once you're qualified and in training, you can train part-time. It takes a long time to do that, and you can work part-time.
I've got a couple of questions, if possible, just because I help students at both the girls' and the boys' school with their applications. And I'm interested to know why UCL still do a panel interview of 4, whereas lots of the other universities have picked up the MMI interviews. And I just wonder what benefits you see with the panel interview.
I suspect we'll probably come round to that.
Okay.
But, it's been discussed quite a lot, and the current group of people who are leading the medical school have a feeling that there's something different, a bit more holistic about having panel interviews. The kind of objective, structured type assessments are probably more common now, aren't they? But there is something about the old-fashioned interview where you get the chance to just talk to the student directly, get a sense of them as a person, how they answer questions, how they follow an argument, how they cope with a bit of pressure. Frankly, that's part of it. And we involve student. We always have a student on the panel. So they kind of, we will usually have someone from outside medical school, so possibly a teacher or someone in the voluntary sector, and we try and have a clinical doctor and a medical scientist. That's the kind of mix we aim for. It varies a bit. So you've got different perspectives. And there is a kind of structure to the interview, but it's quite loose, and it's looking for really personal qualities more than knowledge.
And then another question from me. Why did UCL choose to use the BMAT as their admissions test as opposed to the UCAT?
Well, I mean, I don't know if students will be aware, I'm sure you're aware of the Russell group of universities, which is a slightly stuffy sort of concept of some of the old universities like Oxford, Cambridge, UCL and others. And they kind of, I think, I wasn't involved in these decisions, but I think it was almost a political thing to set themselves apart. It's kind of we're slightly cut above the rest, and we want to be in control, a bit in control. I think it's a bit messy, really. Why have a different assessment? It's more political than anything else, I think.
Yeah, Lancaster use it now, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. A student asked a question. Sorry, they said, does the Observe GP program hold the same value as any other type of work experience when applying for medicine?
I want to say yes, but actually I have no evidence for that answer because
it's new. Yeah,
it's new. It's new. It certainly can't do any harm to use it. Not just to impress anyone else, but for your own interest and information. Can't do any harm to check it out. If you put it on in your application form, I don't think it's. I think it'd be equal. I would say equal.
Yeah, particularly in the current climate, because
yeah,
they're not going to get any work experience, are they? Probably before the October deadline. Now,
I think that's right.
Leeds, interestingly, any students that are listening have on offer some really good webinars, actually, weekly for the next few weeks. I sent around the link for those, and I think they'll be really supportive as well in terms of helping students make a decision. We try and keep an eye out for all of this stuff. I'm conscious that it's sort of nearly 20 to 4. Do any students have any further questions for Joe? Joe, do you mind holding on with me for sort of the next 5 minutes in case anything comes through, and then I'll let students leave as and when they're ready? Does that sound okay?
That's fine. And just to say, if people want to email you follow-up questions, you can contact me with those.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be really helpful. So thank you very much, Joe, for your time. I'll thank you now while the students are still here.
And good luck to all of you. If you feel sure, if you want to be a doctor, go for it. I would say it's a great career, but there's lots of other good career choices for you out there.
So thank you for you all attending this afternoon. If you have any questions, stay in the chat, and Joe and I will hang around for the next 5 minutes to answer those. And if you don't, have a lovely long bank holiday weekend, and I'll see you all next week.